Hey guys, let's start talking about writing formulas and writing and naming formulas. The first thing we want to do is just a brief introduction on the important things that we need to know before we get started. Okay. Now, one thing that we have to understand is that in general chemistry we are going to name three types of compounds. We're going to name ionic, we're going to name covalent, and we're going to name acids. Okay. Now, before we can write the formula, or before we can name a formula, or before we name anything, we have to know, is it ionic, is it covalent, or is it an acid? Now, just a general rule of thumb, if the very first thing that is in the formula or in the name is a metal, we know that we're going to have an ionic compound. If the first thing we see is a non-metal, it's going to be covalent. And if the first thing we see is hydrogen, it's normally going to be an acid. And this will get you through about 99% of what we're going to look at for general chemistry, but there are some exceptions, but we won't really have any of those on the test. Now, when we look at this and we see, if we start with a metal, we're going to have an ionic compound, okay? And we're going to use the name or the rules for naming ionic compounds, which we're going to go over later. And then if we have the name and we want to write the formula, all we would do is just crisscross, okay? If it starts with a non-metal, we're going to have a covalent compound, and we'll use the rules for naming covalent. Or if we wanted to write the formula or anything like that, we would just look at the Greek prefixes. Okay. In hydrogen, it would be an acid, and we would also crisscross. We've also said that you can balance out the hydrogens, but it's basically the same thing. Okay. Remember, we'll have to know our Greek prefixes when we talk about naming covalent and working with covalent, and we're going to go over that in a little bit. But if we have a good idea of this basic beginning, what we start with and what it is, what type of compound we have, it really helps us out when we're trying to name and write formulas.